Should have you kick off with that big show. I think that would be great. Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to give a few more minutes for a few more folks to jump in, so just be patient with us. Keith, it's so good to see you. Do you see all the sun pouring in today? I'm finally getting some sunshine.
I love it. I'm getting shade. A lot of cloud shade.
A lot of cloud shade. Okay.
I
feel like it has a double meaning, my friend.
There's all clouds. I haven't seen the sun. I need the Beatles. Here comes the sun.
Yeah. Keith, I'm overdue for a visit. I got to come up to Connecticut. I got to have some of that pizza.
Want some pizza? Pizza's good here. Very, very good here.
We'll have to have that debate with somebody sometime.
With somebody? New Yorkers are going to say.
New Haven pizza.
New Yorkers and Chicago. It's a big fight over the pizza.
Pizza wars, absolutely.
But they all can fight over who's number 2.
Cool. All right, we'll give everyone just one more minute and we'll get this thing started. Meanwhile, you can hear us banter about useless pizza commentary. So. Looks like we got people rolling in. Excellent.
I see about 14 people on the attendee list right now.
Love it. All right, we'll get this thing kicked off here in about 20 seconds. Keith, my friend. Always good to do these with you. All right, let's get going. Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today to discuss, to talk about our launch that we had recently on Recover Q. But let's real quickly do some introductions. My name is Fahad Qureshi. I am the VP of Cloud here at Qumulo, and I'm joined by my colleague and good buddy, Keith Nargi, who's our CTO for Americas. Keith, how the heck are you, bud?
Very good. Thanks, Fahad. I feel like we always meet virtually on these webinars. It's always good to see you.
It feels like it, my friend. I tell this on every time Keith and I present together. Keith and I never knew each other before we joined Qumulo. We joined on the exact same day, almost 7 years ago, back in January of 2015. We met at a diner, like literally midnight, because his flight was late. And I don't think we ever looked at each other and figured, hey, we're going to be working together for the next decade, right? But here we are. So, as always, buddy, I'm just proud to have you with me and talking about this awesome solution that we're bringing to market. So, so here we are. We're going to be talking about Recover Q, and it's your cloud DR strategy for your most precious data. So let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. So there's a lot going out in the world out there. I mean, when we talk about weather-related issues, whether they're wildfires or floods or hurricanes, and then there's obviously failures that are attributed to what's been going on with the world from a ransomware perspective. We've been dealing with things from a pandemic perspective, where all of a sudden we have to make decisions about how to give access to our data to users that are outside of their normal work environments. IDC reported that almost a third of the organizations they interviewed got hit by ransomware attacks, and that average ransom was somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million. I mean, that's a significant hit to any organization from a business perspective, right? And the thing is that these attacks are only increasing, and the amount that's being asked for ransom continues to go up as well. So again, there's a lot going out in the marketplace, and weather events we just talked about that can threaten your physical data centers. But then you can also have your normal data center outages that are attributed to fires, or you could have an HVAC event or power outages that cause you distress in your environment, and you need to have a business continuing strategy. I think ransomware is one of many attacks that are out there, but we've seen over the last few years, as our discussions with organizations, that customers have gone from a reactive stance to more of a proactive stance of how they're dealing with security, because they know it's not a matter about if, it's a matter about when, right? And when that happens, how is your organization going to respond to it? And so a little bit more on the IDC data, as you see, we just talked about it in the previous slide. A third of the organizations across the globe, over a third, have said that they were a target of a ransomware event, right? And over 13% actually admitted that they were able to escape without having to pay a ransom. But that just tells us that there's a lot that data just tells me that there's a lot that's happening there. And then organizations just need to be really well prepared for what they're going to do from a business continuity perspective. So you need to protect yourself, right? The crown jewels of your organization are your data, right? And the idea is that you need to enhance your business continuity strategy, and it's more important than ever before. So the #1 priority today is preventing against natural disasters and ransomware, right? You need to have a data strategy that's reliable, gives you rock solid protection, and efficient, and limited scale, and full flexibility. These are non-negotiables, right? These need to be in place. And you want solutions or a partner that you could work with that also ties into your existing business continuance applications, right? So your existing strategies, you don't want to be creating silos of strategies. You want something that's coherent and congruent with what you're doing today. So we're excited to talk about Recover Q for you and what that means from a business continuity and disaster recovery perspective. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith, who's going to do most of the heavy lifting today and talk to you about this awesome solution that we're bringing to market. Keith, it's your show, buddy.
Thanks, Fahad. And I just want to make sure everyone knows is if anybody has any questions throughout the course of this presentation, there's a Q&A section in this tool that you can ask questions. We'll either answer them live during the presentation, or we can field them all at the end. But please don't hesitate to ask a question as we're going through this. And as I say that, let's just jump right into what actually is Qumulo Recover Q. When you start thinking about your infrastructure as a whole, there's like kind of an umbrella that you want to think about of like, how are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to defend yourself? How are you going to detect? What are you going to do from a natural disaster or a cyber attack? And really, we boil it down to the 2 Ds and the 2 Rs, the defend, detect, recover, and resume. So the first 2 Ds are really what organizations and security experts and business continuity plans are all about. It's what do I need to do from a cyber attack, defend my data, defend my business applications, and how am I going to reduce the surface area that a cyber attacker can have against me? And really, we think about that in a number of different ways. You'll see we've listed role-based access control, but really there's a lot more to that. It's how have we gone about building our software? How have we prevented unwanted users from gaining access, not just to the file system and the data, but also to the underlying infrastructure as it stands, whether it be a cloud system or an on-prem system, limiting the ability for an attacker to get access to our file system, from an attacker being able to plant a Trojan horse on our system. All of those things are how we defend and reduce the surface area. The next piece of this is really the detection. Is, okay, so they get past the reduced surface area. How do you identify that suspicious activity? What are we doing as a Qumulo system to help our customers understand what is happening on their system all the time? And how do we integrate our ability to monitor the system with existing SIEM tools? And we're going to dive into all of that. And then lastly, once you identify that there's a problem, how do you rapidly restore? How do you leverage snapshots? How do you leverage replication to resume business? And recover is also not just about cyber attacks. This is where your natural disasters, your power outages, your HVAC issues, how do you ensure business continuity can help your business continue forward in the light of a disaster? And then resuming. Once you have to recover from this, and then you need to now go back to your initial production state. All of those things are functions of the Qumulo system that we wrap up in this solution called Recover Q. So let's dive into what that really means for the business. It's really about simplifying your business continuity across your environment from a file data perspective. When you think about the natural disasters, you think about disaster recovery, whether it be from a cyber attack or a natural event, you want to be able to implement a business continuity plan that is effective, that's cost effective, and time effective, right? The 2 effects, right? It's got to be timely and it's got to be low cost. And it's got to be something that you know as an administrator or as a manager or as a CIO of your organization that your business relies on availability and uptime, and you want to be able to reduce how much data loss and service disruption that you actually have. The other piece of that is you don't want to have redundancy all over the place. Everybody has, a DR system, and it's another data center, and it's very expensive to do that. And that's the old way of thinking about DR. You buy a system for production, you buy another system for DR along with applications, and there's a lot of maintenance that goes along with that. It's a capital cost along with an operational cost. And then you have the availability part of it. Our Recover Q gives you the ability to start building and thinking about DR in a completely different way. There is the premise or on-premise system of your data center, and it's the brick and mortar, right? It is there. It is a static data center that has to be upkept. It has to be powered. It has to be cooled. It has to be manned for any type of failures, whether they be a power outage or a drive failure. But what about the elasticity and the always-on cloud data center, the DR in the cloud? Being able to build your infrastructure and build your continuity outside of the confines of the static data center and give you this dynamic data center that you can build it. You can bring your application images and turn them off, and get your data to the cloud, have it constantly synchronized, and then at the time of a disaster, be able to push a button, turn all of your applications on, and then start paying for it. Be able to balance anything that's on-prem into this hybrid model that's down on-prem, but in the cloud it's up. So it's the way of starting to simplify business continuity to the point where you're only managing production and you're staging your DR. And that's what Qumulo Recover Q and Cloud DR really enhances for our customers. So let's go back now that we've talked about the ability to run and think about a disaster recovery as a service. How do we defend against these cyber attacks? How do we prevent or better position ourselves to be in a place to stop and secure our data? And that really comes down to a couple of different things that we've done here at Qumulo. We have built a very purpose-built file system. It is not integrated into the underlying Linux operating system. This is a very custom-built application. That application services a file system. So one of the things we've done is we've reduced the attack surface that one of the most common type of cyber attacks, which is the Trojan horse, where it's implanted on a system. So if an attacker were to get access to a Qumulo system, we have a very skinny down Linux OS that doesn't really allow access to the file system without being allowed access to it via permissions, number one. Number two is that the file system itself doesn't actually have access. You can't gain access to the file system from being on the Linux operating system. That's number two. Number three is that we are constantly upgrading the system so that every time, in the Trojan horse example, we are going to be refreshing that image as part of our instant software upgrades that we push out to our customers, so that if somebody were to land something on there that was time-bound, because we are constantly updating our software, we have the ability to overwrite any Trojan horse that could be on a system, even though it couldn't attack. The other big thing is we've natively developed our protocol stack. Unlike other systems out there that are, OEMing a Microsoft stack, or they're using Samba for SMB, or they're using kernel-based NFS, we've wrote it ourselves, which means it's secured inside of the Qumulo file system, which we've already discussed has a minimal surface attack area. We also have given, excuse me, we have zero third-party code for data access tools, which basically means that everything in the Qumulo system has been written by us, and it's secured inside of our application, which sits on a very controlled Linux image. So now, going up the stack, how do we prevent users? I talked about if you gained access to a host, from a security perspective, do you have visibility into the data? And the answer is no, because we have role-based administration control, which means that in order to actually get on the box, you have to be granted access to it as an admin. And then from there, you can't actually read any of the data without specific API calls to the file system. And those API calls require you to have visibility from an access perspective. And that access perspective really comes down to, do you have MTFS or POSIX permissions? And then anything that is built has access-based enumeration from an SMB perspective. So if you don't have visibility to it, it means you weren't given and granted it. And lastly, we can restrict access from a specific host or network space to any share or export that is on the system. So we're once again reducing the surface area of anybody who could plant an attack on the Qumulo system. Now, the next piece of this is really about securing your data. Everything that is deployed in Qumulo, whether it be on the cloud or on in-prem, has built-in data at rest encryption. All right. By default, it's on. You cannot turn it off. It is no extra cost to you as a customer. And excuse me. And there is zero performance penalty to using our encryption. All SMB traffic is in-flight encrypted via the SMB v3 protocol. And then all of our replication is secured via TLS. In order to do any replication, you have to authenticate your source to your target with a TLS handshake, and all FTP is also encrypted via TLS. So talking about all of that, we now have to go and say, okay, well, what if I'm using Qumulo in the cloud, right? Or I'm using DR as a solution in the cloud. Well, you want to start thinking about the low-cost, highly available secondary sites. You want a turnkey DR. So if you have to resume operations because of an event, because of a natural disaster, because of something that puts your data at risk or your business at risk, you want to be able to have this turnkey failover environment. You want it to be on demand to the point where with cloud, you have the ability to automate. You have the ability to script out your infrastructure so that it's sitting there waiting where you're not getting charged for computational hours or for running an application or for balancing across different access zones. You're basically, or availability zones, you're basically putting your infrastructure in place and waiting for the time to automatically have scripts turn that infrastructure back on. Now, the other piece of this is how do I make sure that I have not only my replica, but also my snapshot data off-site? And Qumulo provides you the ability to take your on-prem snapshots and replicate those to the cloud. And the great part about what we've built is that, excuse me, is that you'll also be able to set a retention policy for your snapshots that is offset from what you have currently for your snapshots. So when you replicate your snapshots, you can pick what the time to live is. And all of these snapshots are immutable. They cannot be deleted by anybody. And then now that you have that, and you want to start talking about push button failover, it is an instant failover capability, right? And that is very important from a business continuity and an RTO perspective. Lastly, is that you want to be able to scale flexibly without having to buy hardware. The great part about leveraging cloud is that this is really all software defined. You get a low cost DR in the cloud, but if you ever needed to invoke DR and the performance of a low cost DR in the cloud doesn't meet your performance needs for production running, you can very easily flip the underlying infrastructure to give you more performance. That is something that you just cannot do when you are buying on-prem hardware that is like a DR in an on-prem cluster. You're stuck with that. You're stuck with the performance profile of that. This is an opportunity to pay for what you use when you need it and burst it at the time of production requirements. These are really valuable things when you start thinking about how do I take this ability to fail it over and run in the cloud as a positive event versus a negative event for your end user experience. Excuse me for 1 second. So let's go back to some more detection things. Now this could be for our customers running on-prem or in the cloud. Qumulo detection is giving you the ability to built-in anomaly detection. We have real-time analytics and real-time visibility into what's happening. So you can see activity that's happening in real time on your system. So if a cyber attack or a ransomware attack begins, you'll be able to see in real time where that attack is stemming from. What user is actually penetrating? Where is that Trojan horse living in memory and going in and potentially encrypting your data? All right, you have the ability to see performance awareness, be able to reveal IOPS in activity that's normally not happening. It's that anomalous detection that most of the time a ransomware attack is going to start encrypting data on you. The attacker owns the key, and you're going to be looking for, like, you know, hey, this isn't normal. I don't normally see a ton of activity in this particular directory or this applications section of the file system. You can now quickly go to your log audit system and be able to verify transactions, who they're coming from, who's the writer, who's the reader. And all of our audit is streamed natively in a syslog message to any SIEM, which is a security and event management system. So any SIEM tool can actually read our data, do the logging, do the correlation, and do the reporting for us. Now, we've identified we have a problem. How do we recover away from that? How do we resume our operations? This is all part of the Qumulo Protect suite. We've talked about having snapshots and replication, but how do you leverage that? Qumulo has the ability to take instantaneous snapshots and then recover away from them. So our snapshots are granular, they're instant, and they're immutable, which means that no one can go in there and delete them. And then in conjunction with role-based administration control, you can actually limit who has the ability to change ATL, the time to live on a snapshot. We have a ton of backup ISV integrations where vendors have taken Qumulo's SnapDiff API and allow them to see our incremental changes and back up forever to a non-Qumulo system. And then our data replication, which is policy-based, it's continuously happening. It leverages our snapshots to identify changes quickly, and then we have a push-button failover for simple disaster. That's to the cloud or to another on-prem system. And then our cloud disaster recovery also enables you to use S3, where we have this function called Qumulo Shift that adds another copy for failing over your applications to an S3 bucket. So with that, just want to go back to the 2 Ds and the 2 Rs. Defend, detect, recover, and resume. This is really the Qumulo strategy around ransomware for the defend and the detect, and the recover and resume is really your business continuity and your DR failover strategy. Being able to initiate at any given time, whether it's cyber attack or natural disaster, the ability to recover your business and resume operations in a timely manner. And this is how Qumulo is taking all of our security and protection and wrapping it up into a solution for our customers to take advantage of. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Fahad.
Outstanding, Keith. Thanks for that walkthrough. And then this is a plug, a shameless plug for a friend of mine who at Qumulo who wrote a fantastic white paper. It's about 27 pages, but it's worth a great read. It's about thoughts about how to move your data to the cloud, because we know migration is the biggest challenge that people face. And there's some really good nuggets in there. So we'll share the link out here, but I wanted to put that up available to the group. So I want to make just another plug. Feel free to populate some. If you have any questions, go ahead and enter it into that Q&A question box section, and we'll answer. Looks like we got one here. So Keith, I'm gonna leverage you on this one. So can I leverage Qumulo Cloud DR if I'm not currently using Qumulo on-prem?
Yes, we have. We actually have partnerships with customers or with other vendors that will help us set up infrastructure on-prem that will do data migration as well as data synchronization. So if you don't want to go away from your current on-prem file storage, but you want to leverage the cloud for your DR, then you can actually set your Qumulo cluster up in the cloud and leverage some of our partnerships that we have with Comprise and Atempo to leverage their software to do cloud synchronization or data synchronization between the on-prem system and the cloud. And we have a number of customers that are currently doing that today.
Outstanding. Thanks, Keith. That was an easy question. So we absolutely have seen that. We have a couple of great examples. Let's see. We got a question from James here. Are there any upcoming webinars about Qumulo Recover Q? We are researching alternate options to DFSR.
I don't believe we have any upcoming webinars specifically around Server Q. Just for those of you who are kind of new to Qumulo, Server Q is what we reference to our hardware that runs the Qumulo software on it. And Server Q is really not a Qumulo branded product. We have an OEM relationship with Arrow, HP, Fujitsu, Supermicro, the list of OEM vendors that provide server class storage for Qumulo software to run on. So we don't have anything really, I think, planned for that right now, but from the perspective of researching alternative options to DFSR, James, I think what we should try and do is find out who your sales team is and get them to come in and do a conversation with you, because we have walked customers through a bunch of different ways to get away from DFS, or at least become less reliant on leveraging DFSR.
Yeah, so James, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your organization is in Kentucky. We have a team out there, so I'll have them, email you. We don't have to wait for a webinar. We can just, set up a call and have our Server Q, PM available as well to answer any questions, to be able to kind of address what you're doing today, what you're kind of looking for, so we can answer any questions for you. So we'll take that as an action item, James. Any other questions? We'll give everyone 30 more seconds if you're typing in. Hit enter fast. I see a lot of familiar faces on here, so I won't call you out, but great to see some of our existing customer base on the attendee list. Really appreciate everyone taking their time to spend a half an hour with us. And please reach out to your local account team, reach out to your local partners. If you want some additional information about this, we'd be happy to have a more isolated session. So with that said, Keith, thanks as always. You're a rock star, and we appreciate everyone making their time today to join us.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.